The global energy landscape is rapidly evolving, with the West pushing for green energy, the BRICS nations balancing between fossil fuels and renewables, and underdeveloped countries facing tough choices on their energy futures. The Western world, led by the United States, the European Union, and their allies, has long been a major player in the global energy landscape. Historically, their economies were built on fossil fuels like oil, coal, and natural gas. However, over the past few decades, a significant shift has taken place. Climate change has become a central concern, pushing these nations towards a green energy revolution. Europe has been at the forefront of this transition with the European Green Deal, aiming to make the EU climate neutral by 2050. The United States, under recent administrations, has also taken bold steps with initiatives like the Inflation Reduction Act, focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and promoting renewable energy. These policies have catalyzed the growth of wind, solar, and hydrogen energy, with the goal of reducing reliance on fossil fuels and achieving energy independence. However, this transition isn't just about addressing climate change. It's also about economic strategy and geopolitical influence. By leading the green energy revolution, Western nations aim to set global standards, dominate new industries, and reduce dependence on energy imports from politically unstable regions. In contrast, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have taken a more pragmatic approach. These emerging powers recognize the importance of green energy, but are not ready to abandon their reliance on traditional energy sources. For them, energy security and economic growth are still closely tied to coal, natural gas, and oil. China and India, for example, continue to invest heavily in coal. Despite being the world's largest producer of solar panels and wind turbines, China remains the largest consumer of coal, which is crucial for powering its vast industrial base. India, with its growing population and demand for electricity, sees coal as an essential resource to meet its immediate energy needs, while gradually increasing its renewable capacity. Russia, on the other hand, leverages its vast natural gas reserves as a tool of geopolitical influence, particularly in Europe. Even as the West pushes for diversification away from Russian gas, Moscow continues to expand its energy ties with China and India. Brazil and South Africa, meanwhile, are rich in both renewable resources and fossil fuels, striking a balance between exploiting these resources and developing their green energy sectors. The BRICS countries argue that their developmental needs and sovereignty should not be compromised by external pressures to transition too quickly. They advocate for a more gradual shift towards green energy, one that doesn't jeopardize their economic growth or energy security. Caught between these two power blocks are the underdeveloped countries primarily in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. These nations often possess abundant natural resources, oil, gas, and coal, but lack the infrastructure and capital to fully exploit them. They face a critical dilemma. Should they follow the Western model of green energy, which requires significant investment, or should they utilize their fossil fuel resources to drive economic growth? For many underdeveloped countries, fossil fuels represent a quick path to economic development. They argue that it is unfair for developed nations, who have already reaped the benefits of fossil fuels, to demand that they forego their resources in favor of expensive green technologies. However, these countries are also the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, droughts, floods, and rising sea levels, which threaten to undo their development gains. Some underdeveloped countries are exploring ways to leapfrog directly to renewable energy. For instance, initiatives like the African Renewable Energy Initiative aim to harness the continent's vast solar and wind potential. But these efforts require substantial financial and technical support from the global community. Without it, the risk is that these nations will continue to rely on cheap but environmentally damaging fossil fuels. The future of global energy will depend on how these divergent approaches are reconciled. The West's push for green energy, the BRICS nations' balanced approach, and the underdeveloped countries' struggle for energy access all highlight the need for a more cooperative global strategy. International cooperation, technology transfer, and equitable financing will be key to ensuring that the transition to sustainable energy is just and inclusive. As the world grapples with the challenges of energy security and climate change, the decisions made today will shape the world of tomorrow. The energy politics of gas, coal, and green energy are not just about power and profit. They are about survival and sustainability.